Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Music is Not a Genre's PODFAST. This is part 2 of what I did last week. This is PODFAST number 35, Israeli and Palestinian Music, Sound Without Borders, part 2. And we're going to get right into it very soon. But first, thank you as always for watching and listening. Listeners, go to youtube.com/@musicisnotagenre. You get a video for every episode of this podcast. Watchers, go to nickdimatteo.com/musicisnotagenre if you'd rather not ask why I'm standing instead of sitting. And everyone, go to patreon.com/musicisnotagenre to support this podcast, my band Rec, and everything I do. Go to nickdimatteo.com in general for everything. If you go to /shop, you can get some t-shirts and all my new designs there and everything like that. If you go to /songcoach, and you're having trouble writing a song, I have a special musicians deal right now. It's damn affordable. You can book a free 15-minute consult there about your song, and then I will work on it for you for as little as $150. That's at nickdimatteo.com/thesongcoach. And then finally, nickdimatteo.com/music is where you can hear all of my music. And I do have a bunch of new music coming out this year in various ways. So again, title here, Israeli and Palestinian Music, Sound Without Borders, Part 2. Last week, I did the general history. I talked about why I'm doing this. I did the general history of both countries, musically speaking, and I named some current modern-day Israeli artists from all different genres, as well as my favorites, and a couple of conclusions here and there. And again, I'm going to remind you why I am doing this. I, again, hope to attract people from both sides. And again, both sides, for me, it's not, are you pro-Israeli, pro-Palestine? That's not where I stand on anything, and that's not what I'm talking about here. My sides are either A, people who are looking for connection between cultures and who love the idea of me covering both Israeli and Palestinian music in one 2-part episode. And then the second side would be people who need to pick a side, who need to be really, really loyal to that one side, that one country, to the detriment of the other country. I want to hear from all of you and anybody in between. I want this kind of conversation. Comment. If you turn this on and you're like, how dare you, dude? How dare you, white dude, who is neither Jewish nor Muslim, talk about these, whatever. I want to hear all of that stuff. Or if you turn it on and be like, yes, good, somebody's trying to bridge gaps and you know, cultural sharing and all of that stuff. Either way. So again, the show format, I'm going to do a quick review of last week's content, and then some current artists from Palestine, some cross-border bands who have members from both countries, side-by-side comparisons of bands, artists from both countries, conclusions, questions, and a challenge for you, which you can probably guess what that is. Sources are Google, Wikipedia, my ears, amar-foundation.org, jerusalemstory.com, and my friend Steve Erickson, who's on this show a lot, who's a great writer, who made some key suggestions, and I will mention Steve when those suggestions come up. And I even quote Steve actually later on. Some disclaimers. Again, I will repeat the ones I said last week. This is not a comprehensive coverage of either country. That would take too long. You could do, podcast after podcast on just the one artist even, and not let alone one country. But it's a pretty damn good cross-section from various genres that I think represents the state of music in these countries today. If you watched last week or listened to last week, I hope you agree with me there. This is not about, again, the diaspora artists, Jewish artists from America or Israel, Muslim artists from America. No, this is about artists from those countries. It's not going to be a general history of the countries, the conflict that may come up. Of course, it comes up in a lot of their lyrics, so that's important. But it's not a political podcast, so I won't be talking about that unless it's relevant. Again, I'm not dismissing or making light of the terrible situation in those countries. And even though my intention is to show the commonalities and the shared music and influences and objectives and things like that, I know that the situation in each country is different. To a large degree. And that said, I won't be getting into those differences. Again, that's more for a political podcast. And to repeat, I'm neither Jewish nor Muslim. But as I said last week, I pay attention to current events and know history well enough to know that my opinions, my weighing in, is well-reasoned and respectful of both countries and of whatever you may believe, even if you disagree. And if you do disagree, comment. So, Previously on PODFAST. I did last week the music history of each country in parallel, and I listed some modern artists from Israel, various genres, with recommendations, and they sound like such and such or this type of music, which again, my favorites of those artists, to refresh your memory before we get into the meat of this week, were Israeli artists Garden City Movement, Infected Mushroom, Noga Erez, Lola Marsh, Netta, Ravid Plotnik, and Shai Maestro. 7 artists that I really enjoyed, and put a couple of those songs on my playlist. Which means now it's time to dive into modern Palestinian music, which of course is equally as rich as Israeli music. Modern Palestinian artists. Again, it'll be alphabetical, and again, no excuses, because every single one of these artists is streaming on all the major streaming services, YouTube, you name it. It's not hard to find. In fact, artists from these two countries overall were actually easier to find than a great deal of the music that I covered in the music from other countries. So, alphabetically speaking, and this is the number 47 Soul. So 47 Soul, S-O-U-L, and that's all one word. They're an electronic kind of R&B pop dabka fusion. Dabka is the traditional folk Palestine, sung in Arabic with some English. If you think Massive Attack, in fact, 47 Soul toured with Massive Attack last year, 2025. Think Gorillaz, think Major Lazer. Great sound. I would recommend the songs Da Luna and Don't Care Where You're From. Really enjoyed both of them, actually. Next artist, Sama Abduladi, was a DJ. No lyrics to speak of. She's great. I mean, just a great mix of techno and some traditional elements. It's a great sound. I would try the songs Reverie and Well Fee, F-E-E. If you like good techno, if you like somebody named Charlotte DeWitt, I don't know that artist, but seems to be relatively popular, that kind of chill techno with some energy, I would recommend Sama Abduladi. Dalal Abu Amne, classical, Arabic, and heritage fusion, sung in Arabic, lots of big energy. She's got a great voice. If you like Lorena McKennitt or Eva Cassidy, I would recommend Dalal Abu Amne. Try out Eina Flestinia or the song The Dalalan. Both of those sound really good to me. And again, I'll tell you my favorites here, Palestinian artists. If you recall, I had 7 favorites Israeli-wise. See how many I have for this one. Muhammad Asaf, who's Arabic pop and traditional music fusion with some funky elements, all sung in Arabic except for some of the collabs, which are in English. It's a nice sound, great voice. Recommendations would be Roll With It and Makanak Kali. It's no real Western comparison that works here. Just think kind of smooth, funky pop vocal sound. You may come up with a comparison when you listen. Next artist is Reem Bana. Folk revival, art music, indie piano, great sound, sings in Arabic. Think of a mix of kind of Tori Amos, Sinead O'Connor, and Norah Jones. Try The Taste of Love and The Absent One. Those are 2 good songs there I would recommend. Next artist, Dam, D-A-M, with the frontman Tamer Nafar, who eventually went solo. This was a Steve Erickson recommendation. Kind of a hip-hop political rap with major Eastern music elements. They're considered the first Palestinian hip-hop group. They've been around for quite a while. They are mostly sing and rap in Arabic with some English. I would recommend the songs I Don't Have Freedom, Prozac, and Overdose. If you like Tupac and just generally any deep bass boom bap hip-hop that's political, I would recommend Dom. But as far as Tamer Nafar's solo stuff, which I like even better than the group, check out the songs The Beat Never Goes Off or Rock It Like a Palestinian, which I put on my playlist. Eliana is a pop sensation. She is huge. She sings in both English and Arabic. She's done collabs with people like Little Sims and Coldplay. Think of Shakira, Rihanna, MIA, that's kind of the sound. And I would try out the songs We Pray and Callin' You. And that's Callin', the apostrophe, and the letter U. Omar Kamal, indie, alternative, electro pop with major traditional elements. Think kind of The Weeknd or Corner Shop or even Bad Bunny, kind of a mix of all those. It's Arabic singing, and most of the titles are written in Arabic, so I don't know what to recommend except for one that is in English, which is Oud al-Batal. There were several others I liked even better than that, though. Lina Makul, pop dance artist, singing in Arabic. Think Rosalia mixed with maybe Gwen Stefani, I guess. And I would go for the songs Shway Shway and Radia. I actually really liked those. Bashar Murad is another Steve recommendation. Steve Erickson, alt-pop, electronic, gay artist singing in both Arabic and English. If you think of a mix of kind of Lady Gaga in terms of breadth, Sam Smith and Sia and Robin, kind of all those sounds. In fact, actually a very diverse sound, one of the more diverse artists on any of these lists here. I would recommend the song Cleffy, which is hardcore house, almost industrial. But then Wild West is a very, very pop song. I just like the range of Bashar Murad's music. Amal Murkus, M-U-R-K-U-S, Murkus, folk contemporary fusion, sung in Arabic. If you think Joan Baez mixed with Fiona Apple, that's kind of the Amal Murkus's sound. A real cross-cultural artist as well. There's other languages there. For example, her collaboration with Residente, the rapper, Abajo los Escombros. But also try Ya Mayela. It's a good song. Saint Levant, which is a hip-hop, electro-pop group with in Arabic with some English. The vocals are. Great sound. Kind of a mix of Wyclef Jean, Timbaland, and Drake with even a little Bad Bunny in there. I would try the songs Do You Love Me and Nari Nari Nari. Good recommendations there. And then I believe, is this the last artist? No, getting there though. Shab Jadid. That's, don't know if it's pronounced correctly, but Shabjdeed, rapper, raps in Arabic. My God. Really impressive. Sounds like a mix of Young Thug, Future, and Earl Sweatshirt, let's say, and many others. Some great glitchy drill trap production. I would try out the songs ID, which is spelled Aadi, and Amrika, which is Amrikkka, and I believe that spelling was intentional. It was a kind of a change up of the Arab word name for America, Amrika. And I would love to read a translation of those lyrics. And finally, Soul Band, S-O-L. It's pop, folk, patriotic music, uplifting melodic pop with major traditional and orchestral elements, sung in Arabic. Most titles are in Arabic, so hard to recommend, but try the song On This Land. It'll give you a sense of what Soul Band sounds like. Fairly varying sound, though, actually. And then there's no direct parallel I can give you to anything in the West, unfortunately. But when you listen, you might have some idea of that. As you've heard, and this is true in Israel too, but I think even more so in Palestine, the artists blend a lot of the traditional Arabic forms with the modern genres and lean more heavily, I think, in the direction of traditional music for their sound. Although, again, a lot of Israeli artists, even the global ones, have that flavor too. Before we get to the next section, let me just lay out right now my favorites from those. Again, I picked 7 Israeli artists. I happen to pick 7 Palestinian artists as well, and they are 47 Soul, Dam and or Tamer Nafar, Eliana, Omar Kamal, Bashar Murad, Saint Levant, and Shab Jadid. I love all of them, and I would recommend all of them, and I recommend you check out, again, other ones that I wasn't as big a fan of because you may like them better. Which brings us to the next section, which is cross-border bands. Not many, but these are bands that share Israeli and Palestinian members. Then they're very culturally significant, of course. There aren't many, which stands to reason, considering the climate there and the situation. But the fact that there are any is kind of huge and indicative of what people all over the world want, especially people in that region, which is just to get along and exist and stop it with the power plays and killing citizens and things like that. Some explicitly mixed groups. As One, spelled A-S, number 1, and then the word one. It's a deliberately mixed Jewish Arab pop group singing in English Boy band. It's a boy band. It is a boy band. I really like their sound. If you like boy band sound, you'll like them. If you like Backstreet Boys, One Direction, Maroon 5, you're going to like them. I would try the songs Together as One or All Eyes on Us. Heartbeat, which is actually a collaborative youth-led musical ensemble. And they kind of do like big We Are the World anthem music. It's done in mixed language. It's done usually for charity purposes, to raise awareness, to raise money. And then Ripples Collective. It's a multilingual performance and activist group blending traditions. And I mean, what a great name, Ripples Collective. You're blending traditions from both cultures. I think that's great. And then you have some scene level crossover artists. El Khat, Khat. Steve Erickson recommended them. And in fact, I quote Steve Erickson here. All the members are Yemeni Israeli, and they built their instruments from scraps found at a junkyard. They call it like junkyard music or junkyard rock. They refer to themselves as Arab Jews, which I freaking love, and sing in Arabic. And I love the retro funky kind of Khruangbin sound, and their horn section's awesome. It's just a great sound overall. I would try the songs Ya Rayat and La Wala, Lawala. Just a great sounding band, a very unique band. And by the way, speaking of Yemen, there are several Yemeni coffee shops in our neighborhood here, and I got to tell you, the food and the drinks are incredible. Artists like Dom have historically performed within Israeli scenes and even in Hebrew early on, so they're sort of cross-cultural as well, certainly Tamer Nefer. And Palestinian citizens living in Israel, like Lina Makul, Dalal Abu Amne, often exist inside overlapping cultural infrastructures by necessity. And honestly, props to all of these people for defying political and religious division. And now a really fun section here before we get to conclusions, and yes, I am dancing, and that is some side-by-side comparisons. These are artists' pairings based on sound, production style, and artistic intent from both countries. So in the alt-pop, experimental pop, you have Noga Erez and Bashar Murad, so Israeli, Palestinian, and they do kind of glitchy alt-pop, minimalist beats, bold, persona-driven visuals. They both use electronic production with attitude and quirkiness. They balance irony, politics, and pop accessibility. They sound similar in many ways. Indie folk, kind of emotional singer-songwriter area, you have Asaf Avidan and then Rimbana. So one from each country. They both have raw, emotive vocals, stripped down arrangements. They focus on the voice as the central character. They're in the emotional center. They have folk roots, but not traditionalist folk roots. Very kind of typical like folk music like you would expect here in the States. In the hip-hop political rap area, a band I didn't mention, Tuna, Hebrew. Great traditional meets acoustic meets hip-hop sound and rapping in Hebrew. And I honestly, Tuna is probably one of my favorites on any of these lists. Compare them to Dom, the Tamer Nefer. Geez. Shared lane, kind of introspective and socially aware hip-hop that's also dynamic, lyrically dense. Beats that lean towards kind of classic boom bap, as I mentioned. Alt-rap rather than trap. And next is the electronic club kind of global fusion lane. You have the bands Infected Mushroom and 47 Soul. Infected Mushroom, Israel, 47 Soul from Palestine. Electronic music rooted in regional identity, dance floor driven but culturally specific. A lot of Middle Eastern scales and motifs, but inside a very recognizable club kind of techno house structure. I mean, it's, slightly different influences, but if you didn't know anything about anything and you put the two together, you would be like, yeah, they go together. Indie pop, chill wave, atmospheric. You have Garden City Movement from Israel and Omar Kamal from Palestine. The shared lane, dreamy textures, understated vocals, mood first songwriting. It's less about the hooks and more about the vibe. They have very Western indie aesthetics with some subtle regional inflections. And then mainstream pop with a regional flavor. How about Omer Adam and Mohammed Asaf? So again, one from each country. Big emotional pop. Drawing from Middle Eastern traditions, though. In both cases, strong vocals, dramatic pop arrangements, blend of a modern pop structure and traditional melodic phrasing. Big anthem, stadium-ready music. Then jazz and virtuosic fusion. Honestly, surprisingly, even though I am a jazz fan, one of my favorite genre representations here in both weeks of this podcast. Shai Maestro, and then an artist I didn't mention, Faraz Suleiman, who has compelling harmonic structures, both haunting deeply affecting. He plays piano and sings in Arabic. I would recommend the song Hymn to Gentrification, which just by its title alone is worth listening to. They're modern jazz infused with Middle Eastern harmony, and just you feel the depth, you feel the emotional content, even if you're not someone who understands the jazz language. Complex improv, of course, but still very relatable. So those are my kind of, I hope what that, illustrated is that if you like a certain kind of music, you can find that music in any country. And if you're someone who is trying to find those connections and who is looking for, new music of a certain genre you like, don't dismiss countries you know nothing about, musically speaking or otherwise, if that. And when we're talking about Israel and Palestine, take a listen to these pairings that I just did, right? And the type of music. Take a listen to that same type of music from, let's say, Japan or Korea or Eastern Europe or something like that, or even the United States. And what you'll find is, generally speaking, broadly speaking, they fit in the same genre, but the flavors of each culture are different. And within that, the flavors of Israeli and Palestinian cultures are so similar in comparison to Asia, the West, Europe, whatever, that you can understand how much of a shared kind of musical identity they have. And again, lyrically, very different in many ways, but in terms of sound and flow and production and all of that, even the traditional elements, there are people who are experts in both traditions who would say, yeah, but that's Israeli because it does X or Y, or this is Palestinian. I get that. But from a Western perspective and someone who's listening to it from outside those worlds, they sound very similar to me in a way that I think illustrates that they are sharing a culture, whether, the governments want to admit it or not. Okay, so some conclusions. First, a little about what we discussed, and then some kind of, other general ones. What the side-by-side comparisons reveal, again, is that the regional sound transcends borders, as I just mentioned. Even when the artists aren't working together, they often draw from the similar scales and local flavors, similar rhythmic patterns, which some of those rhythmic patterns sound like reggaeton, to me. Vocal ornamentation styles, like similar styles in that sense. Their sonic DNA overlaps more than not. Number two, genre alignment is greater than national identity. So if you're someone who's a musician who's just into hip hop, or who's into, dance or, trance, or who's into folk or whatever it is, you're more likely to follow that lane than you are any kind of national identity lane. Some of your lyrics might have a national identity to them, but you're much more likely as a musician to be more interested in how your music is sounding, right? Number three, parallel evolution. So both scenes have been absorbing global trends such as hip hop and indie pop and EDM, and rock too. Not as much here, but still some rock. And they reinterpret them through their own lenses, through their own local cultures, and end up producing hybrid genres that feel both global and specific and relatable, I think, to even someone from the West. The biggest difference, of course, are lyrical, not musical, as I have been alluding to throughout. Palestinian artists are often explicit about identity and politics. They are struggling to exist. Israeli artists are more varied. They are slightly more in the power position. You can kill me later if you disagree. Sometimes the political area lyrically is a little more implicit from Israel. And honestly, Israeli artists tend to be slightly more popular and cross over more. Although, again, 47 Soul toured with Massive Attack. So, it happens both. But there's a lot of overlap. And the bottom line is, if you build a playlist of the pairings especially, it would sound like one genre, one regional scene even, with different languages. And 3 different languages, right? Hebrew, Arabic, and English. And then, of course, there was some Spanish and a couple other things, but really those 3 languages. Some general conclusions: despite obvious differences in language, identity, and politics, the overlap is striking. I've said it before, but I cannot, it bears repeating over and over and over again. That's the whole point of these 2 weeks of PODFAST here, right? So Israeli artists are mixing the Middle Eastern, European, and global pop, electronic. Palestinian artists are mixing Arabic tradition with hip hop, Indian electronic. It's almost the same thing. Fusion cultures. They're not purist cultures, no matter how much some of the religious zealots want them to be. There's global and local tension kind of brought together. Israeli pop, like Netta and people, they aim kind of outward. Eliana. And Palestinian music, it kind of balances global accessibility with more of a kind of local specificity there. The identity is central, even when unstated. They're not shying, or they're not trying to make themselves sound American. They are pulling from Western, musical traditions, modern music, but they're still keeping that local identity, right? And of course, language fluidity, like I mentioned, Hebrew, Arabic, and English across both scenes, and crossovers in multiple languages in the same song often. Music is used as a social tool in both countries, as it is in every country to some degree. Artists often live in close physical proximity but separate cultural worlds, and I think the music helps to bridge that gap as well as collaboration, right? So if you strip away the language, strip away the politics, both Israeli and Palestinian modern music scenes are deeply hybrid, globally aware but locally rooted, driven by identity and storytelling, and they are genre fluid, more so than many Western artists, frankly. Both scenes are trying to do the same thing. How do you sound like yourself and still bring in the rest of the world? And finally, and perhaps most importantly, just like in my other countries episode, the more I listened, the more I realized that there are so many global sound crossovers that could easily appeal to people from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, etc., that more than just those 2 countries sharing things with each other, they both share traits with all of the rest of the world. Which brings me to the challenge for you. Dun, dun, dun. Here's your challenge. It won't take long. Pick one artist pairing from whatever genre you prefer. And I mentioned, was it 10 of them? Something like that, 8 or 10. See if you can't find similarities and parallels between those countries' artists. Listen for that. And then see if you can hear things in those songs that remind you of music from the Western world. And I'm saying see if you can. I guarantee you will. And I'm curious to know if you listen to, Omar Kamal or some of those, whoever it is, do they sound like someone you know from the Western world or an artist you like? And I would start again, pick a genre or 2 or 3 that you prefer and listen to both of those artists. Again, they're super easy to find. Go on whatever streaming service you use, you will find them. All right. And as a companion to that, and to Steve's recommendations throughout this, thank you, Steve Erickson, again, here's a follow-up to explore. Tamer Nafar, Slingshot Hip Hop, is a documentary on Palestinian rap made in 2008. Tamer Nafar is profiled in it, released an EP this year, actually, in 2026, called In the Name of the Father, the Imam, and John Lennon, which I am compelled to listen to. He also acted, basically playing himself, in the 2016 film Junction 48 about a Palestinian rapper trying to succeed in the Israeli music scene. Wow. I need to see that. Steve saw a Q&A with him and the director and the lead actress who plays his group's backup singer in that film. The director said he actually toned down typical Israeli Zionist hip-hop lyrics and that the real thing would come off as a completely over-the-top caricature. Interesting. The production schedule here didn't leave me time to check out all of these, so I've got a challenge too. Thank you, Steve Erickson. Please take me up on this challenge. I want to know what you think about the music that I have mentioned here. Questions: did you know anything about the music from either country before I did these 2 weeks? Had you already heard of any of the artists I mentioned? I can say that I did not. Steve knew more than I did. Do you like any of the music that you've heard? Hopefully you have paused this or taken notes and gone to listen to these artists. Does this change and or enhance your perspective of the conflict? Actually, the non-musically speaking. I'd love to know the answers to all these and anything else, because as always, my objectives here are music, conversation, and connection. Thank you for hanging with me for this 2-week, 2-part PODFAST, and I will talk to you next week.